Welcome to Bold Guy DIY. In this video, I'm going to give you the basics on how to replace a smoke detector. We all hope that we're never going to have to use our smoke detectors, in the sense that we hope there's never a real fire that's going to require them. Many of us might have the experience of setting the smoke detector off because of something that we've cooked that's gone awry or something like that. But hopefully you haven't had actually any fire experiences that have required it. However, if you do have a fire, that smoke detector could save lives because it gives us a much earlier warning system than we would have, especially if we were asleep when a fire started. In this video, I'm going to share with you the 3 common types of detectors in our homes and explain the difference between the battery and hardwired versions and what you should be on the lookout for. So without further ado, let's jump into it. The first thing that you need to know is that there are 3 different kinds of detection in the same looking units. They're just these round puck style detectors, but they do different things. There's 2 common smoke detector types, the photoelectric and the ionization. And then thirdly, there's also a carbon monoxide detection. And you can find models that have all different combinations of those things, often an ionization and photoelectric combo, or an ionization and carbon monoxide, or a photoelectric and carbon monoxide. So it's important to check the different options that are available at a home improvement store or electrical supplier and know what you're getting into. The difference between the ionization and the photoelectric smoke detectors is the way that they detect the presence of smoke or fire in the first place. In the ionization type, it relies on a certain number of particles of combustion entering and tripping the sensor. And in the case of the photoelectric, just like a photoelectric beam that you would see in other types of sensors, it requires actual smoke to enter the device so that it can detect that there's been an interruption to that photoelectric sensor. Because of the way they work, a photoelectric eye is typically better in detecting fires that start with a lot of smoke and are smoldering, whereas fires that have a lot of particles of combustion but not a lot of smoke, maybe like a grease fire or something like that, would be more readily detected by an ionization detector. A carbon monoxide detector doesn't really detect fires per se, but it does detect excess amounts of carbon monoxide, which come from things like furnaces or stoves that are not properly vented or that are malfunctioning. For the base use in your home, you're probably going to choose an ionization or photoelectric smoke detector and pair it with a carbon monoxide detector, all in one unit, depending on the area of your home. And one of the most important considerations when you're choosing what device you need is to check with your local regulations. This could be something like checking the electrical code or the fire code in your area, or you can often call your local fire department and they'll explain what's required for your particular area. It's important that you use the right device for the area of your home, but also important that you meet the requirements of the legislation for your area. Possibly, if you didn't have the right kind of device installed in your home, you might have issues with insurance or other types of coverage. So it's important to make sure that you check before replacing it that you're putting the right thing in place. If you're using smoke detectors in a residence, especially in new construction or in more recent modern construction, it's really important that you're using hardwired smoke detectors and not battery operated units. And that's because not only do they have 2 sources of power, both connected to the electrical supply of your home and also a battery backup, but they're also interconnected with a 3rd wire. That's the red one that comes with those connections. The interconnection is super important because if one of the smoke detectors in your home is triggered or goes into an alarm, it'll send a signal to all the others and they'll go off as well. If you could imagine having a smoke detector in the basement, maybe a couple floors away from everybody in their sleeping areas, and you have a problem in the middle of the night and it's too far away, you might not actually hear it or it might be muffled. Whereas if it triggers all the smoke detectors in the residence, everyone's going to be able to hear it on every floor and to be able to make the appropriate action of getting out and getting safe. Some older homes or different building codes might not actually require that interconnection, but almost always in a residence, according to the electrical and building codes, they do require hard wiring and in most cases interconnection as well, so that you get that chaining effect. So let me show you what the basic installation's like. This is assuming that you're replacing something that's already there. And when you remove the existing smoke detector, you're simply going to be left with a regular octagon electrical box, and you're going to be left with the pigtail or the little wire connection that was left from the previous smoke detector. In some cases, that connector is already going to fit perfectly with your replacement smoke detector, but in some cases you're going to have to remove it, and so I'll show you how to do that here. You start by removing the connections to the original, and if at all possible, you're going to de-energize the circuit before starting. So we're going to remove the pigtail from the rest of the circuit by removing the wire connectors, taking those wires out, and then replacing them with the new pigtail if necessary so that we can connect it. On this particular one that I'm showing here, there isn't actually the interconnection wire, which is a real disappointment, but at least we have the dual power, which is going to be available when our home is powered and also when relying on the battery backup should the power go out. Once you've got the new pigtail in place, or if you're able to use the old one, you're simply going to install the ring and cover up that connection. You're going to plug the pigtail into the smoke detector, and you'll know that it's working when you get a nice firm click. As you can see here, I struggled to get the alignment just right, but after a few tries, I was able to get it, and now it's time to clip it in to the holding bracket. To do that, you're simply going to rotate it until the tabs tuck inside of the bracket, and when you're all done, it's nice and firm. It's actually quite difficult to remove them usually. They're meant to be quite stiff, and you can test it out and hear the incredibly piercing noise that would let you know what happens if there's an actual fire. If you have the interconnection working at this point, when you test one, you should hear it ring through the rest of the house as well, and that's really important to be able to test and make sure that it's functioning properly. Pretty much all modern smoke detectors come with a 10-year guarantee. They're meant to last at least that long, whether they're battery or hardwire model. So after 10 years, they should be replaced, regardless if they seem to be working or not, and you should be testing them at least a couple times a year to make sure that they're functioning properly. I think that's all you need to know for the basics. If you have other questions or comments that I didn't cover in the video, please let me know in the comments section below, or send me an email. My information's in the description. If you've got comments or suggestions about other videos you'd like to see as well, I'm always happy to hear those too. Thanks for following me along in this journey, and I hope you'll subscribe and check back regularly as I post a new video every weekend. Until next time, in all your DIY projects, whether they're alarming or not, don't be afraid to be bolder.